Hello, friends. It is I, host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People, and I'm back with another exciting episode of Exciting Tables and Words about Human Personality. Today we're going to begin on page 38. Disorders and Functions Table. Now, let me start by just saying this functions and disorders table should be taken with a bit of a grain of salt. It's just sort of ideating and brainstorming about how the links might work or something like that. I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight into it. Alright, so hopefully the levels are okay on this as background music for a little bit. It'll run out after about a minute. Disorder, paranoid, category eccentric, outlier and trust issues, and it's bad TE. You might say, why is it bad TE and bad SI or NI? Well, I guess it's because it doesn't reflect the way things actually are or work. Schizoid, eccentric is a category in psychology. Attachment issues is where it's an outlier in. Bad FI. SE or NE is the other thing that coordinates with that in some regard. So it's not really bad SE or NE, but FI paired with overbearing SE or NE, ENTP, ESTP, INTP, ISP. Schizotypal, eccentric agreeability, TI, bad TI with bad SE or bad NE, ENFP, ESFP, INFP, ISFP. Antisocial, dramatic, transgression is the outlier. In other words, they actually transgress against people. It's bad NE because it's a lack of desire to engage in discourse first, I guess you could say. And it's bad FI or bad TI. ESTP, ESFP, ISTP, ISFP are most likely types to be antisocial. This is just, again, take it all with a grain of salt. And just because they're the most likely type to be antisocial doesn't mean that any given instance of that type is more antisocial than the average, right? It just means that if somebody is going to be antisocial, it's probably going to be one of those types. So just because you're ESP doesn't mean you're more antisocial or likely to be antisocial, just that if you are antisocial, you're likely to be one of those types. Borderline, dramatic category, relational stability. It's actually attachment and abandonment issues. Bad TI. Well, I mean, the funny thing about this is I see borderline at least as being entirely nurture driven, and it's bad attachment style. So I see bad attachment style as irrational, so I say it's bad TI here. INFP, ISFP, ESFP, ENFP. Obviously, I think any type can be borderline now, actually. Histrionic, dramatic display, TEI, seeks or polar, ESFP, ESFJ, ENFJ, ENFP. Narcissistic, dramatic, egocentrism, SITE or FE, INFJ, INTJ, ENFJ, ENTJ. Those are the most narcissistic types, or types most likely to be narcissistic. Not that's. I just made the mistake. I was saying no, don't do. They are the type. If you have a narcissist, it's most likely to be one of those types. I believe that to be the case, but it doesn't mean that those types are more narcissistic, nor that somebody of that type is particularly likely to be narcissistic, right? It's just that what I said. Avoidant, an anxious category, social efficacy, FE, SI, or NI. So you're looking at your 7th and 8th slot FE people. Dependent, anxious accountability, TI is bad with SE or NE. So you're looking at ENFP, ESFP, INFP, ISFP. Obsessive compulsive, anxious, acceptance is an outlier in, and it's bad FE, SI or NI, INTJ, ISTJ, ESTJ, ENTJ. Okay. Notes on trust. Real trust isn't the decision to burden another with a risk. In other words, I can't decide to trust someone about something because to trust means to operate as though the issue in question were already decided. I don't trust my kid when I agree to let them go to that party, provided they call in at 11. I allow it despite my mistrust. If I trusted my kid, it wouldn't be a decision I'd be involved in, because I'd be operating as though the question of my kid's ability to determine party attendance independently had been already decided in the affirmative. That's one way of looking at trust. Another way of looking at it, though, is that it's not manifest when you have it like that. The exercise of trust is precisely in choosing to afford the benefit of the doubt in a circumstance when you don't necessarily. So you can look at it either way. All right, that's not a very good table. I give that page a C minus maybe. Here's more on objectivity and subjectivity, understanding the truth by distinction between humans. Here on page 39. Introverted sensing, object permanence. Links two similar subjective experiences across time to understand the self as a source of knowledge. Infers a non-universal heuristic about objects. They don't move on their own. Why is it non-universal? Well, because sometimes they do move when you're not looking. Just they didn't move on their own, probably. Deduces a universal rule about the self. My observation alone does not instantiate on the physical plane. So I can't say rock and have a rock appear, right? The communicable aspects of the experience I see this thing into existence are less reliable than the experience of the thing itself. In other words, physical instantiation is unconditional. Words don't accomplish it. Knowledge comes from multiple experiences. The self, then, is understood as that which persists between experiences, or that which retains imprints of multiple observations to weave together an understanding of the distinctness of the self from that which is not me. Introverted intuition links to shape constancy, in contrast. Links two different subjective experiences not linked in time to understand the world as a source of knowledge. Deduces a universal rule about objects. An object retains its shape, communicable attributes of form, even while no two perceptions about it are the same. Infers a heuristic about the self. My observation is less reliable than my meaning-making. Treating things as though they were existentially manifest independent of an observer is more reliable than my experience. In other words, communicability is unconditional. Knowledge comes via intuition. Meanings implicit to reality are intuited by individuals. Subjective, incommunicable experiences deviating from those meanings are dismissed as bias or simply not representative of the truth, but rather deviations to be explained via other objectively so truths. So, in other words, NI rejects subjective experience, whereas SI rejects what it perceives as subjective meaning, or objective, really what it is, objective meaning. This is a kind of enigmatic page, but it's good anyway. I almost want to reread it later to make sure I got everything from it. But I give it a B. It doesn't achieve on enough levels. Like, I want more, what do you call it, like colorful stuff and meandity. Alright, so let's see. Objectivity and subjectivity explain all. Objectivity and subjectivity explain all. Overview. Objectivity and subjectivity confuse people. The reason is because there needs to be a third one for the whole thing to make sense. So let's divide it into three: agent, subject, object. Now we can properly understand the matter. Agential is that which is specific to the self. Subjective is that which is specific to subjects, including the agent, which functions metaphysically as a subject. Objective refers to that which is communicable. Only defined things can ever be objective, and only symbols are subject to that sort of definition. Ergo, that which is objective is that which is definitively communicable, or definitionally. Definitively meaning by being defined as such, it's certain in that regard. Functions. The Jungian cognitive function model builds off a taxonomical reality that doesn't articulate well. The reality is best articulated as follows. There are 4 ways in which being manifests. Humans act, know, interface, value, or legitimize. Each of these processes occupies a channel of attention. Humans have finite attentional channels, and attentional manners manifest along a descriptive vector of exclusivity among others. So, in other words, they relate to each other by a different kind of relationships, one of which is exclusivity. If you have one, you can't hate having the other at the same time. One of which might be cooperation, like they work in tandem, or they can be attending to two different things concurrently without there being any attentional breakdown. So, for example, chewing gum and walking. Humans occupy both experiential and abstract dimensions. We know ourselves as extensions across time. Our desires and fulfillments relate not only to our immediate state of well-being, but also to statuses, livelihoods, affiliations, and other such abstractions. Cognitive functions explain how individuals manifest as translations between observations and experiences in the metaphysical and physical dimensions, respectively. Take feeling and thinking, for example. An INFJ is prioritizing the objective renderings of subjective experience. The agent, the INFJ himself, is ignored in this configuration of human most of the time. NI says, here's what's objectively communicably true about that person's subjective experiential state. Why it's true and how I know that isn't native to NIFE, as that's an agential function. If pressed to provide such, he turns to objective analysis of the agential. He establishes or affirms that the objective arguments are communicably legitimate, namely they withstand consistency tests. In other words, his reasoning must withstand scrutiny. The determination of a subjective state is rarely an issue. The INFJ doesn't generally need to prove that Todd was hurt by what I said, usually to have that status accepted as a point of fact in an argument. Instead, the INFJ must present the NI attained and communicated truth by relative strength, comparing its various other equivalencies about the strength of which we both agree. One real challenge for an INFJ. I don't know why it got so INFJ-y here all of a sudden, but it did. This page to me feels overwritten. You know, it's like it's too fancy. It doesn't need to have. It represents where I was. I guess artistically about this shit about 6 months ago or so, or 8 months ago. You know, I've come along a little bit in terms of my understanding of how this art ought to be. Although I always go back and forth a bit and whatever. Irrelevant. The INFJ is uniquely well endowed for success in the 21st century. Our realities increasingly comprise exchanges of meaning and social utility. The most metaphysical of all types, the INFJ has saved the tragic fate of the ENFJ. While INFJ has only SE to link to the experiential and the conscious stack, the 8th slot SI and 5th slot FI afford the INFJ potential to attain a wholeness of being not afforded the ENFJ. The challenge for INFJs to effectively employ their strong but unreliable and insecure SI as an epistemology. This likely begins with self-attendance, baths, eating, etc. Attend to such things consciously. Note the physical sensations of the animal self. The epistemological aspects of SI, the understanding of how experiential knowledge can be determinate and legitimacy so will likely follow as the INFJ supercharged NI does its thing. Okay, well I like that last little bit about INFJs and stuff. It's pretty right on the money, it seems like. What am I at, 1322? This is a change of topic, so I guess I'm gonna come back to this one. This next one is a bit of a debate thing, but it links it back in, I believe, to I don't know, maybe it isn't. Oh, it does link. Yeah, it does link back in. Okay, so it does link back into cognitive functions. That's why I included it. And I'll cover that in the next video. That's going to conclude this video here. And I'll play a little background music again that I was playing before. Oh, I did it. I messed it up anyway. The first time. I just played the fade out part. I thought I was playing the whole minute and something or whatever, but I was playing just the fade out part. Anyway, this is premiering Friday night. I'll try to be there for each of these ones, so hopefully I'll be there. Hopefully I'm here now while this is premiering and chatting with y'all. I haven't figured out how to turn on live chat replay for premiere videos, but I'd like to figure that out. So if anybody has any tips on that, let me know. And I do offer typing services. If you want me to type you, I will do so for the low cost of $60 to $100, either 60 or 100. If you're rolling, pay me 100. That's the price technically. If you're not rolling though, as I think most of my audience isn't, then you can scrounge up to $60, pay me $60, and I'll type you. You can PayPal it to me, or PayPal it to Kimberly actually. Email me and I'll give you your PayPal address. It's my email is suartscire@gmail.com. SSUARTSCIRE@gmail.com. You get about a 75-minute or so session, and I'll talk to you, ask you a bunch of questions, have you fill out some couple little papers beforehand, and if you want to, and give you my full thoughts about what I observe, what I hear from you, what I see, and what I suspect regarding your type and functions and aspects and stuff like that. Okay, so thanks for watching, and please, please, please don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.